1930s. He saw this corner, and he's the one who called it the Four Corners of Law. You got St. Michael's. This is where St. Philip's was before it got torn down in that hurricane 1710. This is St. Michael's. It is the oldest church building here in Charleston. It's been here since 1761, 10 years before the Exchange Building. In fact, when George Washington came to visit, he worshiped in that church in pew number 43. So pretty historical building. So the Four Corners of Law, you have God's law. That's our federal courthouse, that's federal law. That's our county courthouse, used to be the state courthouse. That's county law. And City Hall, this is city law. It's very easy to remember if you remember hail, mail, jail, and bail.
Jail, mail, jail, and bail.
So this is the Four Corners of Law, and that is St. Michael's Church. St. Michael's Church is haunted. Of course it is. In 1802, there was a young lady, Harriet Mackey. Now, Harriet Mackey, at the age of 12, she was an orphan and she inherited her parents' fortune. She was an only child. Now, of course, that went into a trust until she became of legal age or became married. Well, at 17, Harriet fell in love with William Rose and was engaged to be married inside St. Michael's. 3 days before her wedding, she dropped dead. Nobody knows how, why. There were all kinds of police all around it, wondering what was going on. Now, at the same time, there was a French artist that was painting portraits. William had hired him to paint a picture of his bride, but she died before the artist was able to do so. So the artist wanted to know, since you already paid me, do you still want me to paint your bride's portrait? He goes, well, she's dead. He goes, that's all right, I can still paint it. So his bride, Harriet, was laid out in her wedding dress, and the artist painted her portrait. It was a miniature portrait inside a locket, and it was done in watercolors. It was so hot and humid down here in the south that he had to take a ribbon and tie it around her jaw to keep it in place as he was painting her portrait. This portrait is a very famous painting that is found at the Yale University Museum. It's appropriately called The Dead Bride. And this is the picture of Harriet Mackey, who still haunts this church to this day, and who is buried in her wedding dress inside their graveyard. And this is about the size of the portrait. Can you imagine that's in watercolor? She haunts this church, especially on wedding days when there's other brides trying to walk down, and she steals their thunder. But she still wants to get married in this church. That is a courthouse that held one of our famous or infamous hearings in the early 1800s, 1820. There was a married couple. Their name was John and Lavinia Fisher. The Fishers owned an inn at the 6-mile marker. It was called the 6-Mile Inn. And they would invite travelers into their home, and then they would rob them. But Lavinia would play a very sneaky trick, because Lavinia was young and beautiful. She was about 27 years old, beautiful dark hair, bright green eyes, and she would bring these travelers in, invite them in to stay, and make them a special brew of tea. The tea was brewed from oleander, a beautiful plant here, but the entire plant is poisonous. And this special brew would put them to sleep. If she didn't do it right, it would actually kill them. 2 travelers coming through. One of them was John Peoples. He stopped in. She invited him in. He says, I don't know, I just want to really get water for my horse. I really need to continue on. She goes, no, we have room here. Stay the night before you move on. She Gave him a cup of tea. Lucky for John, he didn't like tea, so he didn't drink it. But he was escorted to his room. And when he went into his room, he says, you know, this was very weird tonight. She was very forceful wanting me to drink this tea. She also asked me some very personal questions, like what was I selling? Do I have any family members waiting for me here? Any family members waiting for me at home? How much money do you make on these travels? He says this was very suspicious, so he's afraid to fall asleep, especially since she was very pushy on having him spend the night. So he's propped up in a chair right outside the bedroom, inside the bedroom door. And as he's finally slowly falling asleep, he hears somebody outside the door, and they said, let's just kill her. So as they were going for the doorknob, he hears them, and he jumps out the window, gets on his horse, and he sneaks back down to Charelston, and he reports what's going here. The same week, there was another traveler coming through. There was a band of vigilantes that were knowing that things were going on at the Fisher's house, so they brought a big group there and threatened the Fishers to leave the home or they're going to set it on fire. So they left the home with their gang and they took off. So they left one man behind. His name was David Ross. David Ross spent the night. Well, the next morning, the Fishers and their gang came back to their inn. They found David Ross there. David Ross wanted to leave. They were holding him back. He looks at Lavinia thinking that she's going to help him. She chokes him and throws his face through the stained glass window on the front porch. He starts running for his life. The men come out, start shooting at him, and he runs down to the police station here in Charleston, and he meets up with John's Peoples, and their stories are aligning. So the police go down, arrest the Fishers and their gang, and they are found guilty, and they are put in jail and then put in front of the judge. The judge finds them guilty of highway robbery and attempted murder, but the crime was highway robbery. He sentenced them to hang. Now, Lavinia didn't think she was going to hang because she was a woman. They don't hang women. So she thought she would get away with it. They threw them in jail. They asked for a stay. They also asked for an extension. They kept on getting denied. And then finally, they were going to be hung. On the day of their hanging, she went down to the gallows in a white dress. She thought that she would be available again for marriage. She thought in her own mind that she would not be hung, that they could not hang a woman. But the judge overheard that, and at the gallows she said, don't worry, honey, we're going to hang your husband first. You'll be a widow. As they're walking to the gallows, she's reaching out to the crowd, hoping someone's going to save her, and nobody did. They got up to the gallows, and as they're putting the noose around her neck, she yells out to the crowd, if any of you have a message for the devil, give it to me now. I shall be dining with him tonight. And they hung her, and she took her last breath. She haunts this city, and she's still looking for young men to take her hand